Last but not least, our seventh goal was
in a high school scenario, and what you wish you knew in high school about pursuing STEM in college. Lastly, on Saturday, students in advanced placement English classes will participate in a mock exam, which is offered through the Grant of Massachusetts Math and Science Initiative. The grant helps to support Saturday study sessions and mock exams for students taking AP English, Math, and Science classes. This year, NIMBUC offers 16 AP courses, which offer college-level classes while students are studying at NIMBUC. The growth of the program has been supported by the MMSI grant. That's news, I guess.
Next, we move on to the superintendent comments.
all right. Well, good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. First off, I want to provide an update on where we are with the installation of the filtration system for the well water at Misco Hill. As you know, as we discussed a couple meetings ago, we were informed by the DEP that our testing is slightly above the threshold level of a trace element known as manganese in the water that we've been testing out in the ballpark of around 0.31, 0.32 milligrams per liter, and the threshold is 0.30. Okay, so it's slightly above the threshold, and I do want to know publicly that that threshold level varies from state to state. For example, if you were to travel upwards of about 30 to 40 miles from here in Connecticut, the threshold level for wells is 0.50. Okay, so it varies depending upon your locality. But obviously, in an abundance of caution, as soon as we found out from the DEP, we shut down the bubblers and we installed Poland spring water and so on. So let me pass out, and I'm going to do the best that I can, particularly as an ex-chemistry major, speaking of STEM-related fields, to kind of explain some of the options, and Jay and our Director of Buildings and Maintenance, Ken Chouanier, is on hand to answer any questions. We essentially had two options for two different types of filtration system. One is known as, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, a green sand ion exchange system?
A green sand filtration was one, and then ion exchange would be one of the second options.
Okay. And the other is a pressure filtration system, okay? Now, Jay was good enough to break this out from a cost perspective, but the ion exchange would have a lower cost up front, okay? We're estimating the upfront cost would be $25,000. Okay?
Option one or option two?
Option one. Okay? But realize with that type of system, you have relatively large tanks, correct?
Yes.
And it would be upwards of how many of these tanks would be installed?
We might have to have 6 in series that when they get clogged up, they'd have to be changed and then exchanged, possibly every 10 days, because we utilize about 3,000 gallons of water a day.
Okay, so
that's why the cost would be more.
Considerable expense to go with that, okay? Option two, which does not have the recurring expense but has a greater upfront expense, would be a pressure filtration system. And essentially, to explain that, would be...
It's just like your pool filter at home. The water gets filtered through green sand, it takes out the impurities, and then it backwashes outside into raised leach field. It can't go into your regular leach field because they don't want the iron to clog up your regular leach field. That's why it needs to go into a separate leach field on the front lawn at Misco is the spot that they chose to place that.
And the one, so strictly from a cost perspective and a simplicity perspective, the pressure filtration system is the way to go, okay? One of the snafus that we hit, as I explained in the background notes, is when they did the perk test in front of the school, they found that the land was fairly damp, correct?
Right, we had a high water table.
High water table.
Yes.
Surprise, surprise. So essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at the installation of a raised leach field. And I know, Ken, you probably have off the top of your head the dimensions of this, right?
It's about 30 by 40 by about 3 feet tall.
Okay.
And the water will go into a 1,000-gallon tank. That water will then be pumped uphill into the raised field and then dissipate back into the ground.
Okay. So, and our timetable for construction of this would be?
We started excavation today on the installation of the green sand filtration, as well as the excavation for the raised leach field outside. We expect it to be done within a couple of weeks, and then everything will be stopped until the DEP does all their final approval and inspections before we can convert totally over to the filtration system and then take out the Poland Springs dispensers at that time.
Okay. Now, what we got from DEP today, that was the initial approval of the design?
Yeah, that's approval to go. We had a verbal approval prior to this. That's why we started. This was the official paperwork saying, yes, you may proceed with all the, everything you need to do.
Okay. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. We anticipate by the end of this month having this system in place, being able to go forward per usual with the water. And obviously, you know, I'll keep you apprised at the next meeting, but as soon as everything's up and running, we'll apprise all of our VISCO parents. Okay. Any questions on any of this? Super. All right. Thank you. A second item in my report just says an FYI. We got some feedback from parents, both parents who are doing the loaner program, but also parents who are doing a BYOD or bring your own device with regard to the iPad program, of what kind of coverage is there for things like cracked screens. And believe it or not, we do get a couple cracked screens from time to time. So what we've done, and we did this after looking at a couple different firms and getting some feedback from other districts that are doing a one-to-one program, is contracting with a firm known as Security, which provides warranty plans for the iPads. And essentially, I put a link to it. It's on our district iPad page. But essentially, for an expense of $49 per year, that would cover the student's iPad, essentially soup to nuts. And if it could not be fixed, then essentially it would be replaced. So as I explained, there's no expense to this district. This would be, again, something completely optional for parents if they chose to participate in it. And it also has a pretty reasonable sliding 2 or 3 year plan as well. So something, again, for informational purposes that I think for some of our parents, particularly if they might be doing the loaner program, they need to realize that it's very much just like a textbook, that if it's lost or damaged, there's a financial liability. This warranty plan kind of takes care of that concern. Last but not least, you have in your packet where we are with regard to our year-to-date expenditures and the FY15 budget. Really hasn't moved very much since December, seeing that we've had a freeze in place since we've learned about the cut to regional transportation. So myself and Jay are really only approving essential expenditures or emergency expenditures. Jay, is there any line item that you'd like to highlight? Or?
No, not really. Everything, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. I think you got about a month to go, but you know, we're in the same situation we were in a month ago. So I think we're, you know, I still think we're going to be okay, but it's really tight.
We'd be delighted if our snow amounts in January and February are equivalent to December.
We may just not do any plowing, that's all.
Yeah. All right, and that's all I've got.
Joe, I have a question. I couldn't open the link for the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that the parents do directly with the company.
Correct.
Yeah. And it has nothing. I just don't want. I can just picture.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see Mr. Amatrano get in the middle of every single
Yeah.
warranty issue.
Yeah. We are affiliated in all of the Apple equity leases because we are the fiscal agent there, but with this particular third party, no, we're not.
Okay, great.
Okay, other questions? All right. Okay. We'll move on to subcommittee updates, and we'll begin with policy subcommittee. In your packets, you should have seen 3 policies for second reading and approval this evening. One is new policy GCCD, which is establishing a domestic violence leave policy in the district. And also revised policy DJE, which has to do with bidding requirements. And finally, revised policy ADDA regarding background checks. Were there any questions or anything that needed clarification on? Talked about them before. Hearing no questions or no comments, may I have a motion to approve policies GCCD, DJE, and ADDA?
Make a motion to approve policy GCCD, policy DJE, and policy ADDA.
Anything? All right. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. New policy GCCD is established, and DJE and ADDA are revised. Perfect. Next, we'll go on to budget subcommittee with Chris.
We are scheduled to have a budget subcommittee meeting Thursday night here at 6 o'clock. And then following that, at 7 o'clock is a multi-board meeting, and Dr. Merschek is going to give a brief presentation of kind of where we're at. We're sort of in the infancy stages, but things are moving along. And he'll give his presentation on Thursday night.
Right. Next up, we have old business, and we'll hear an update on the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools legal defense.
Okay. If you recall, during our last meeting in December, I brought to the attention of the committee the fact that the Association of Regional Schools is looking to put forward a legal defense fund to fight the 9C cuts that have been made to regional transportation. And as you'll also recall, that represents about a loss of approximately $300,000 in funding this year for regional transportation. That's a significant amount of money. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's roughly 1% of our operational budget this year. I think as I will be discussing Thursday in Budget Subcommittee and then at the multi-board, I think the even broader implication is the fact that that is going to affect us moving forward for the FY16 budget planning. You know, myself and Jay, in putting it together, I think you've got to do the fiscally conservative thing and use the FY14 regional transportation numbers to build your base rather than what was originally promised to us for FY15. So it's got very large implications. I had the opportunity last evening, I talked to Dr. Hemman, who is the Executive Director of the Association of Regional Schools. I kind of brought back some of the thoughts that were shared at the last meeting, kind of wanting to gauge, you know, how many regional school districts are part of this. Plus, I also spoke to some of my colleagues who are also superintendents in regional school districts. The number that I have now is 16 out of the 80 regional school districts have already contributed or voted to contribute. So exactly, if my math's correct, exactly 20% or 1/5 of districts. Dr. Hemman is pretty passionate about this topic because he sees that if the regional school districts don't come together, they don't unite on this, then regional transportation will be fodder for additional 9C cuts in successive fiscal years. they have gotten the ball rolling with a law firm out of Springfield, Kane, Hibbard, and Myers, to do an interpretation of that 2010 law that I cited, and then that they're citing, which states that regional transportation cannot be cut from if there is not a cut in Chapter 70 funding, plain and simple. And as you know, with these latest round of 9C cuts, Chapter 70 was not cut. So the argument is you're obviously making an unfair, disproportionate cut to regional school districts. So he told me he was anticipating sometime this week he'd be getting a formal legal opinion from this firm, and this firm employs an attorney who was very much actively involved in the drafting of this law back in 2010. So, you know, really, again, it's a decision of this committee whether to get involved in this legal defense fund. We can I can apprise you at our meeting in 2 weeks from today as far as what the legal opinion is. I think Dr. Hemmen gave some great advice as far as choosing maybe at some date in February or March, inviting our legislative delegation, particularly with two new reps, a new state rep and a new state senator, to kind of give them our perspective on this. I think we'd be well served to do that as well. But as an update, that's exactly where we are right now.
Any further questions? Okay. Moving on to new business, status of the district action plans.
Okay, well, I don't want this to be death by PowerPoint. I'm a little nervous because I actually, without thinking about it, created something like 16 PowerPoint slides. Just probably, you know, like 9 or 10 too many. But you should have in your packet a update of where exactly we are with regard to our district action plans for this year. I think, and this is a repeat of what I've done over the last couple of years, in that I think it's really important, at least a couple times a year, to kind of do a check-in to see where exactly are we with our key actions. We're now somewhere between that 1/3 to 1/2 point of the school year. How well are we progressing? So if you recall, in drafting these action plans and you as a committee approving them, we pared it down, and it's still, in my humble opinion, still pretty aggressive as far as what our goals are. But we kind of pared it down to 7 essential goals that speak to 7 of our key strategic initiatives in our strategic plan. And the 7 areas are: what are we doing with regard to aligning our curriculum to the Common Core? What are we doing to support, build the inclusion model of delivery of instruction? How are we integrating technology, K through 12? How are we designing and using common assessments? What are we doing with regard to our STEM programming? Implementing a very comprehensive educator evaluation system, and what are we doing to improve our online presence to better communicate with our constituency? Okay? So very, very briefly, I kind of took each of these 7 goals and said, okay, what have we completed? What are we actively working on? And what are the areas where we still need additional work, or do we have plans for the remainder of the school year? So a lot of our work with regard to our curriculum alignment has been at the elementary level in implementing, as you know, our new literacy series, the Wonders program. We've had a lot of professional development, a lot of training and support for our teachers in implementing that this year. And as you know, we're just in our 2nd year of using the online curriculum mapping tool, Rubicon Atlas. And we've progressed very nicely in what is known as the stage 1 in identifying what are our standards, what are our essential questions, what are our enduring understandings, and so on. Also, the technology piece, particularly at the secondary level, in transitioning to e-textbooks. We've transitioned at the middle school to all 4 content areas using e-textbooks and 2 of the content areas here at the high school. Additional work, again, more training for our elementary folks in the Wonders Literacy Series and also in our second year of the Empowering Writers program. We're now also, with regard to our curriculum mapping, transitioning to stage 2, which is identifying the assessments that are being used in our units. Obviously, this takes a lot of work with people collaborating both at the grade level and departmental level at the secondary. And we really hope to, again, assess where we are at the end of the year with our professional staff, our elementary folks, with regard to what do we need to tweak, what do we need to improve with regard to Wonders. The inclusion model, I think we've made some progress with that, particularly at the elementary and middle school levels and having inclusive practices. I know a couple meetings ago, both Dennis and Maureen shared what the DCAP or the District Curriculum Accommodation Plan was. The first time that it's been really renewed and revived in a period of probably at least 6 or 7 years. Dennis, I know, has spearheaded a district-wide inclusion committee that's really looking at what are effective inclusion practices at all 3 levels. Part of this and particularly really targeting the work that we've done in grades 3 and 4 is rewriting the IEP goals and rewriting the service delivery pages to reflect inclusive practices rather than the traditional pull-out. But again, more work is needed in this area, and in my humble opinion, additional staffing is needed. As I kind of put as that bullet point, you'll probably see in the FY16 budget request additional recommendations for staffing. So then, obviously a big goal, and will continue to be a goal, is what we're doing with regard to technology integration. So a lot of work at the secondary level on our one-to-one program, and this year a huge quantum leap, expanding it rather to NIPMUC, including for the first time having a student-run help desk, where we have 2 out of the 5 periods every single day help desk staffed by students. So very, very interesting. We really hope to bring that to the middle school as well. We formed, which I co-chair with my colleague Alice Gentili, who's busy on her iPad right now, a technology integration committee, and right now we're really focusing a lot of our work on the middle school and the middle school staff, because they have 1+ years of iPad experience under their belts, and how do we tweak things and make things better. And as you recall, this current year's budget had a real significant investment in technology spending, and specifically equipping and updating our digital projectors and our Apple TVs, both here at the high school and at the middle school. So some real, stepping back, some real positive progress has been made. I think ongoing, we have to continue our focus, our PD. We've done a lot of work with a firm out of Wellesley called EdTech Teacher that's really developed a national reputation in working with one-to-one districts. We'll be starting very shortly an online webinar series of PD for our teachers, so something that's new. A lot of feedback, and our integration committee is going to be tackling the whole issue of consistency, having a greater consistency as far as different apps and different platforms between teachers within the same school, but also between the middle school and the high school. I touched upon establishing a help desk at MISCO, and then also the work around informational sessions for our parents. I think we've scheduled our first one for January 27th for both MISCO and NIPMUC parents on kind of App 101 and iPad 101 of some of the basics. Then our goal around common assessments. The whole issue of QPA, or quality performance assessment, has been one of our professional development focal points this year. But I've got to be honest, we have a lot of work to do in this area. You know, one of the positive things in going to the new literacy series at the elementary level is our grade level teams are now identifying common assessments that are being given through that program. And we're trying to carve out a lot of individual and group time for studies, things like book studies on assessment practices. But like I said, we've got a lot of work to be done in this area, particularly around the curriculum mapping piece and being able to document stage 2, or what assessments we're using in various units. And then the whole piece that kind of ties in with educator evaluation of being able to identify DDMs, or district determined measures, what types of common assessments for non-MCAS teachers could be used. So right now we're just in the planning stages of developing 3 committees, one at the elementary level, one at the middle level, and one at the high school level, to kind of take an inventory of what we're using right now. The fourth goal around STEM programming, I think, you know, Chris kind of alluded to it when he talked about the STEM alumni fair, which we're going to have later this week. I think the high school has done a yeoman's job in getting the word out there, getting more support from that. We more than doubled the number of STEM scholars. To put it in perspective, we had 37 last school year. This year we've got 96. So with that becomes an additional pressure. Hey, let's find quality internships for these kids. But I think John and the staff have done a terrific job in reaching out and creating more connections, particularly amongst our parent base that are involved in STEM-related fields. We've got some great connections with WPI, with Tufts, particularly at the middle school level, Tufts Cummings Veterinary School in Grafton. And this year we've connected with Harvard, particularly around the programming that they've done around women in computer science. And we've actually had 2 different trips where we've taken approximately 50 junior and senior girls from NITMUC to Harvard for different seminars on programming and coding. So I think that's been a real key success. So again, growing this, finding more connections. I'd like to see more connections between kindergarten, middle, and the high school. I mean, not kindergarten, elementary, middle, and the high school. We've had some success bringing our 8th graders up to things like the STEM fair and so on. So kind of continuing those connections and continuing to find more opportunities within our community for internships. Educator evaluation continues to be really a huge challenge, but with that challenge becomes a huge opportunity. I think we're fortunate to have a partnership with MRTA that is very, very open-minded, very, very reasonable people around the table who very much have the vision around this is a process that needs to be squarely focused on improving practice. So what we've done together collaboratively is, and this started towards the end of last school year, was revising some of our timelines and some of our expectations to make the process a lot more manageable. As a district, we've offered at the beginning of this year some refresher training on SMART goals, on the use of TeachPoint, the many forms. And as I said before, getting the ball rolling on inventorying our assessments as possible DDMs, which is a huge challenge for for our district and every single district. So like I said, you know, the Department of Education has the expectation that we will identify 2 DDMs for every single educator. That's everybody, principals, assistant principals, teachers, everyone, myself included. We also this year, and we've come to some consensus as far as looking at the surveys and how we're going to tweak them, but implementing end-of-year surveys to students on their teachers, and also implementing teacher surveys to be used for feedback for their principals, and also feedback for myself. And then we also, again, want to survey our professional staff to gauge the quality of the evaluation feedback, as we've discussed before. So then, last but not least, our 7th goal was improving what we're doing online. So I think we've had some great success here, kind of going from somebody who was a webmaster to somebody who's a district communications coordinator that is posting things but also creating content. We've established Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages, not only for the district but also for our elementary schools. And we're probably about 2 to 3 weeks away from launching a brand new district and school websites as well. We have a beta site up and running. We just have to kind of fix some links and get some content up there. And really what's left is that whole piece about going live with the new site, and then also continuing to grow and coordinate our district social media accounts. I think our goal in the action, in one of the benchmarks, was to have about 1,000 likes or followers. I think as of today, we're about 653 likes on Facebook, and I think we're about a couple hundred on Twitter. So I think it's definitely within reason. So that's a very quick 16-slide slide through our 7 goals. But again, I think considerable progress for where we are within the school year. So does anybody have any questions regarding any of that?
With the new program that has an agreement with the accessibility piece of it, making sure it's accessible to all areas as far as, you know, people can't read,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, blind, impaired.
That's something that we probably have to look at. We have had at least 2 or 3 occasions focus groups of taking a look at functionality and so on, but I think kind of speaking to UDL or Universal Design of Learning and so on, yeah, I think that's something we probably have to look at.
Joe, I have a question
Yeah.
about the student help desk. How exactly does that work?
Okay, so
How would it work at the MISCO level too?
yeah, and that's a good question. Right now, it is an elective course that kids sign up for. So out of the 5 periods, 2 out of the 5, it's an actual class. So I'm told, I think it's probably about 10 kids per section. One of our teachers is actually assigned to it, and there's actually a help desk space downstairs within the library. So between the teacher and our district technology specialist, Dale Casal, they kind of work with the kids in kind of, for lack of a better term, triaging the iPads and showing them some basic repairs that they can do that don't necessarily merit that it has to be sent off to Apple.
Okay.
Or kind of showing them some of, say the kid has a glitch with a specific app. So that's part of, kind of the educational process. I think the vision would be moving forward, how do we get coverage for all 5 periods?
So during these 2 periods that this course is offered, that these 20 students are enrolled in, other students, other high schoolers can come to the help desk and get student help as well as?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so do the other students that are seeking help, do they have time to do that in their day? Just not completely understanding the high school setup.
Yeah, I think what would happen would be they would work it out so that they could figure out during break, during one of the breaks or during lunch, or I think usually what would happen is they might, from what I've seen is the library media center has almost become like ground zero for the iPads. So a lot of times, they may first approach the librarian, and the librarian would say, well, come back at this particular time, or here, let me write you a pass. You can come back at this particular time,
Okay.
you can talk to
Gotcha.
someone. So.
Okay.
So I think the challenge at the high school, I think there's still some learning curve there, but I'm very comfortable and very confident that the high school, because of the nature of older kids, more mature kids, it seems like it's been a relatively smooth transition. I think the challenge is, okay, if you're going to establish a student help desk at MISCO, how do you work that in? Who are the kids that are doing it? Off the top of my head, is it strictly 7th and 8th graders? Do you man it during project block? What does it look like? To what degree of supervision is there, and so on.
That's kind of what I was interested in, like what are the nuts and bolts of it? How does it actually work?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great.
And I think, believe it or not, I got an email over Christmas break from John Clements, and I was going over his budget as well, cutting away. But anyway, that's another story. I think the vision of the help desk was kind of like the Genius Bar, that create a comfortable space somewhere in a nook of the library where kids could go and sit in a comfy chair like this and relax and be able to talk out a problem with a kid. But I'm very, very confident we will have a cadre of kids that A, are very interested in this, but B, we can really build up their knowledge base of being able to quickly diagnose a problem.
Sounds great. Okay. Questions?
All right, next we'll move on to correspondence. Is there any correspondence that needs to be shared? All right. Any other matters not anticipated by this committee within 48 hours of our meeting being posted? Okay. Upcoming, we have future agenda items, including first pass at the district fiscal year 16 budget on January 26th, the turf field feasibility study results on February 9th, the budget hearing and course calendar for 2015-16 on March 16th. Right. And we have a multi-board coming up in budget subcommittee this Thursday on the 8th as well here. Right. Okay, anything else? Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second?
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned.